If you've built your life around keeping the peace, staying agreeable, and making sure everyone else is okay, there's a point where it starts to break you down. Quietly, internally, you don't necessarily rage or explode. You just feel invisible, exhausted, disconnected, and probably resentful as hell. And if you're like most people-pleasing nice guys, you might not even realize what's happening until something inside you finally gives out. This video is about that breaking point. Not the dramatic collapse people see on the outside, but the slow internal unraveling that happens when your self-sacrifice becomes a way of life. I know this story very well because I've lived it. Less than a decade ago, my life was falling apart, and a lot of it had to do with decades of my people-pleasing behavior coming to a head. Until everything crashed, I didn't have the self-awareness to understand the role I was playing in my own misery and relationship struggles. I started this channel to help other guys who may be in similar situations. And if you're just starting to realize you've been living this way, or if you've felt this way for years but maybe haven't had the words, I hope this helps make sense of what you've been carrying. That's who this is for. And I'm going to walk through some of the key signs of what I would call nice guy burnout and what I did to start coming back to myself. Now, I know relationships are complex and sometimes the partner you're with is part of the problem. I get that. But this video isn't about blame. It's about what happens when you disappear in a relationship because you never learned how to fully show up. And that pattern can happen with any partner, even though ones with certain personality traits are likely to make it worse. I'd love it if you drop a comment and let me know what resonates most from this video. And if you're in an angry phase right now, that's valid. I get it. Just don't rage dump. This channel's for guys who are already struggling and are trying to turn things around. So let's start with something most people ignore, your body. Because long before your mind catches up, your body is already telling the truth. You wake up tired, even after a full night's sleep. Not normal tired. It's that heavy, can't shake it off kind of exhaustion that clings to you all day. You might get headaches, stomach issues, muscle tension, things doctors might chalk up to stress. But the stress is chronic and it's tied to the pressure you put on yourself to be everything to everyone. Your immune system starts slipping. Maybe you catch colds more often. Every bug seems to last longer than it should. Sleep starts to break down. Either you can't fall asleep because your mind's spinning about what you said or didn't say, or you're waking up at 3 a.m. anxious or angry about how you're showing up in other people's lives. Your body starts holding the tension, jaw clenching, teeth grinding, skin flare-ups, maybe even hair loss. But it's not just your body that's sending distress signals. The next area that gets affected is your emotions. And when your focus is always on other people's emotions, eventually you lose touch with your own. You can track everyone else's mood, right? You know exactly when someone's upset, but when someone asks you how you're feeling, you've got nothing. Maybe fine or tired, but that's it. You absorb everyone else's emotional energy, but feel blank inside. And I don't think I was ever clinically depressed, but I spent years with a lot of the time having this low-level, dull mood. And at the time, I didn't know why. And I know looking back that this is why. You start watching your life instead of living it, going through the motions on autopilot. The stuff that used to bring you joy now feels like a chore. Even when something good happens to you, you barely feel it. And I really remember the emotionless autopilot part. I used to think of this as playing the good soldier. I'd get up and do everything I needed to do, regardless of how I felt about it, even many roles I really disliked, but I didn't see any of it as optional. I was just doing what I thought I was supposed to do. I just endured it and continued on. And to be clear, it's good to have grit, but that isn't the same thing as what I'm talking about. When you're chronically disconnected from yourself and you keep doing stuff on autopilot, especially when you might have other options if you had the courage to speak up and were more connected with yourself, it's just really unhealthy. And this is what self-abandonment feels like. And when someone asks you what you want, you freeze. You either say what you think you're supposed to say, or maybe you draw a blank. The longer you play the good soldier, the less you even know who you are or what you want. All of this builds up over time, and it's not surprising that you become resentful. And here's where it really gets toxic. You develop a resentment inventory. You start keeping score in your head, everything you've done for others, everything they haven't done for you. And that imbalance starts to fester. You hear yourself saying things like, I always have to be the one who does whatever, or no one notices what I do. That quiet sense of martyrdom creeps in. You start to feel like the unappreciated one in every room, the reliable one nobody checks on. And then you get passive aggressive. You sigh when asked for help. You drop little comments about how tired you are, but still say yes. And I think this is where people-pleasing nice guys get off track in our relationships. In the throes of always saying yes, pretending to smile and do everything for everyone else, we secretly expect that others will notice and reciprocate. And in nice guy recovery speak, this is what is called a covert contract, because you're the only one that knows about it. Nobody else does. It seems obvious to us that we're busting our asses and just want a little bit of appreciation and respect, and that others should return the favor once in a while. But one of our blind spots in this situation can be that, well, all this seems obvious to us. We're not actually saying what we mean, meaning what we say, asking for what we want. We're using a lot of indirect communication. We've unintentionally trained others to treat us this way. And I'm not excusing their behavior. There are plenty of selfish takers out there. I know that. But again, this isn't about blame. If you actually want to turn this around, focusing on them won't help you break out of your nice guy, people-pleasing behavior. So as time goes on, you look around and realize that you're not quite sure who you are anymore. Someone asks you what kind of food you want or what kind of movie you want to see, and you genuinely don't know. You just kind of draw a blank. Maybe you used to love certain hobbies or activities. You've let them go because they didn't really fit with whoever you were trying to keep happy, and you stop prioritizing yourself. Making even small decisions becomes hard because you're always checking, well, will this upset anyone? What would they want? And you probably feel really unseen by people close to you. And this is one of the things that made me feel the most lonely for years, even though I wasn't alone. But I realized later that even though there were two sides to it, I hadn't shown up as my full, authentic self either. Eventually, you catch your reflection and ask, how did I end up like this? You realize that you're not only frustrated and don't feel seen or appreciated, but you don't respect yourself. The pressure continues to build, and this is when it finally shows. You quit the job. You leave the relationship. You move. Something big in life. You just do it. And from the outside, it looks really impulsive. What happened to him? Why did he suddenly change? But internally, it's been building for years. People are shocked. But everything seemed fine, they might say. But you didn't give them clues. Not because you were lying, but because even you couldn't fully name what was wrong. And when the dam breaks, it's all or nothing. You go from silence to detonation because you've held back for too long. Moderation doesn't even feel possible. In fact, you're probably scared that if you don't just quit the job, relationship, or whatever it is that's causing you a lot of pain and distress, you'll doubt yourself, someone will talk you out of it, and you won't follow through, and you'll stay stuck. So you just want to blow it all up and get it over with. So afterward, you're confused. You feel guilty and unsettled. You question your decisions, but also there's a strange kind of relief. And now you're standing in the wreckage, trying to figure out who you actually are. What do you do when you're at this point of burnout? Here's where things can start to shift. But, I got to be honest with you, there's no quick fix. This pattern might have been years or even decades in the making. I know for me, it went on for decades until my life fell apart and I was so miserable, I had to figure out how not to keep repeating the same mistakes. And I was very angry about how I was treated in a couple of different relationships. My anger went on for a while. It was justified too. And if you're in an angry phase right now, then that's where you're at and that's okay. But once my anger died down a bit, I knew I could stay focused on blaming. And while there was legitimately plenty of blame to go around, I also knew that letting them continue to live rent-free in my head wouldn't help me. I knew I had to take my power back. And one thing that really helped me when it was going on long runs while I listened to podcasts and YouTube videos about nice guy syndrome, people-pleasing, dating, relationships, etc., I also read books about these topics and joined a men's group. All of those things really helped. And there's an old saying that when the student is ready, the teacher shall appear. And my openness to learning about where I was undermining myself and my relationships really helped me to gain a new level of understanding that has transformed my life. I also realized that some of the relationships I had chosen weren't healthy for me, and I finally understood why. And when you find your voice and learn to maintain your frame, everything shifts, and you probably wouldn't even consider some of those people as potential partners anymore. Shedding my nice guy mask eventually led me to meeting my second wife. It's a healthy, respectful relationship that wouldn't have happened had I stayed in my old patterns. So if any of this feels uncomfortably familiar, if you're living that quiet burnout and no one seems to see it, know this. You're not broken or weak. You're not a bad person, and you're not the only one going through this. You're not a lost cause, and I don't care how old you are, you have decades of life experience to tap into. You're just burnt out from living a life that hasn't included you. Recovering from this isn't about becoming someone new. It's about unlearning the belief that your voice doesn't matter, that your needs are less important, that being agreeable is the same thing as real kindness. It takes humility to decide that while other people might be partly to blame for your situation, your power lies in being open to figuring out how you can show up in the world more effectively and then take steps to do that. And if you're ready to start reclaiming your voice, this channel is here for that. Please subscribe for more content like this. And if you happen to know someone else who's stuck and might benefit from hearing this message, please share this with them. Thanks for watching. I do appreciate your time.